Hi, everyone. This is Tracy Mansour. I'm in Global Marketing for Randstad Sourceright. And we're so pleased to have you on today's webinar, The Robots Are Here, Now What? I'm joining you from my home office today in Tampa, Florida, and I'm joined by my colleague, Jason Roberts, who's in his home office in Dallas, Texas. So thank you to those of you who are joining us from across the globe. We're going to let folks get logged on. We're just now at the top of the hour. And please do answer this polling question. As a leader, do you embrace the use of technology? We'd love to hear where your threshold of use is in terms of tech stack technology and what that means to you in the context of today's webinar. The robots are here, now what? So while we wait for folks to log on, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Jason. My gut reaction is that many of you have probably met him along the way. He's traveled all over the world delivering content like the session we're about to embark upon. But I'll give you a little bit of a bio on Jason in case you're not familiar. Jason Roberts is our Global Head of Technology and Analytics for the Randstad Sourceright Talent Innovation Center. He's a leading authority on HR analytics and systems, with more than 15 years of experience using big data to drive recruitment strategies for Fortune 500 companies. Jason has a real mastery of using data to drive business strategies and outcomes, and has led Randstad Sourceright to provide clients with unparalleled insights into their operation. He also launched the company's Talent Radar platform, which is an advanced analytics and recruiting intelligence platform that helps employers leverage data from multiple systems to support informed talent decisions. So Jason has worked in all types of high-tech and other industries to recruit and hire top-level talent. He has an MBA in project management from the University of Texas at Dallas and a bachelor's degree in communications from Dallas Baptist, and he is Six Sigma certified, if that wasn't enough. So thank you again, everybody. So nice of you to join us today. And I think we're going to close out our poll here and get underway. So Jason, I'm going to let you take it away as we wrap up our survey results.
Thanks, Tracy. That was quite an exhaustive introduction. I'd forgotten some of those things about myself. So thank you for that. And welcome all to our sessions entitled "The Robots Are Here, Now What?" So we're going to give it just a moment right now. Our poll takes a few seconds to refresh itself and give us sort of all of your answers and give us a feel for where everyone is. So this is interesting. So we have well, 46% of people said not applicable. So that's interesting. I haven't seen that happen on this particular poll yet. The large percentage of people who did believe it was applicable said, letter B, I consider myself moderately tech savvy, followed by very tech savvy. And there are 9 people here who use every tool and app they can get their hands on, and then some. So those 9 people especially, I would hope to get your comments as we go. So there is a chat section in here where you can provide comments back that I get to see. And what I'll do is I'll try to treat this a little bit like a Facebook Live, where if you fire off questions, I'll keep an eye on things. Tracy also will be keeping an eye on things. And as we go, we'll try to answer any questions that come along and respond to any hecklers that are out there. So we'll do both of those things. If you're the 2 guys in the Muppets that sit up in the balcony and heckle, we'll even talk to you guys too. Either way. So as Tracy said, I'm joining you from my fortress of solitude here, the home office, and I'm thrilled to welcome you all to this webinar. Let's dive in and get started. So the robots are here, now what? There's been a lot of talk about AI. There's been a great deal of talk about what that means for our industry And the question I get from recruiters independently is, are robots going to take over my job? And I think part of what we're here to do is answer that. But even a broader context of that, what technologies are hot? What technologies are trending? What do we expect to be the things that really change the face of our work going forward? And what do we expect to amplify our ability to serve our customers, both internal and external, right? So how can we make the biggest business impact as possible? And there are some great new tools that have come along to help us with that. So I firmly believe that to succeed in a digital age, which I just learned something new. We did a big marketing effort, and we're actually in a post-digital age. I didn't know what that term meant for a long time, but it's actually sort of a place where there's a whole generation that is in our workforce where digital work is their native way of working. So, for example, I have a 13-year-old, and she was doing video conferencing with a hand-me-down iPhone on FaceTime before she had an actual phone number. So video is native to her. She's more comfortable on video than she is on phone. It's very strange to me. In the same way, I have people that I work with who they're more comfortable taking notes on a phone, typing them out with their thumbs, than they are actually writing on a notepad. So the digital world has become native to a lot of people. And as leaders in this space, we really have to embrace technology and leverage that use, that native ability as best we can in order to be effective. So we've done a little bit of research and work on how business leaders across the world are thinking about different things in the talent industry and the talent business. And that report is called the Talent Trends, and specifically we have Talent Trends Quarterly that's being released as we speak. Actually, it's being released right now. Throughout the session today, I'll be bringing you statistics and notes from the Talent Trends survey. Know that it's quite extensive. 800 HR leaders across the globe and across industries. We do a lot of work to make sure that we're getting a really solid sample of the world of talent technologies and talent in general when we do this. So that's where this is coming from. So when I start spouting statistics, all those are our statistics that we're bringing to you for the first time. And that Talent Trends report is available to everyone who attends this webinar, and we will send that to you free of charge. So let's get started. How HR tech powers talent acquisition outcomes. These are some statistics that jumped out at us starting off related to HR technologies. 66% of the leaders that we polled believe that human workers will be more efficient, productive, and innovative based on technologies that are out there. 65% feel that candidate experience will be positively affected. You may think, how in the world is that possible? If we're automating a lot of this stuff and a machine is doing the work, how can it feel like a better experience to someone? How can machines make something more human? I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. I really do believe that machines can make this process feel more human than it does now, and candidates will bear the benefit of that new capability. So that is coming. 51% say candidate database search, tracking HR metrics, and management of HR analytics are the top areas. So this is the big deal. So when we look at where people are focusing their attention, the top areas to be automated, the polls say candidate database search, metrics, and HR analytics. So those are the places where we see it. And to be fair, we've automated a great deal of our analytics. In fact, it's funny, when I saw this polling question and the responses people had, I hadn't even thought to list something like that as what's coming next, because I'm seeing it done pretty broadly. So they're absolutely right. The candidate database search is one where we're seeing a lot of activity as well, and we'll spend some time talking about that. First, I'd like to sort of ground us in a place where we talk about where HR technology sits in our world today, and we see a lot of activity in new technologies just in our consumer lives. So I want to spend a few minutes talking about consumer lives. Social media is a huge part of my world, the world of my kids, the world of my family in general. I actually get in trouble if I don't double tap on somebody's Instagram post and say that I like it. Hey, you didn't like my Instagram. Well, sorry, I didn't know that was a requirement, but I'll go do that now. So this is becoming ubiquitous in our life, and there's when it starts showing up in song lyrics. Leaving me on open was a song lyric I heard the other day, meaning they opened my message, they didn't respond, so they left me on open, which is a really wild thing. So it's becoming an integral part of what we do. The question is, how are we utilizing this in our business? We've learned to search some, we've learned to do some work. In fact, I was at a conference recently where there was a long discussion about searching in Facebook and how it's different to search for interests, which is what Facebook documents, versus experience. So hiring people based on their interests is a great new concept, and that's something that's out there. New collaborative technologies, so the back and forth collaboration technologies that we have makes working remotely, as I am right now, really, really powerful. Shift the business to the speed of the cloud. So, my kids the other day were complaining they didn't have enough storage on their iPhone. I said, but you have the cloud. Just put everything in the cloud and pull down what you need. And that's happening more and more often, where the cloud is becoming a core part of everything that we do. In fact, it's so ubiquitous for us that when I go to a place or have to interface in the system where it's not cloud-based, it's shocking to me now. We definitely have some places where that's the case, but in our world, it's very much so. Robotics and automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning. This is where we'll spend quite a bit of time talking today. What I want to call out here is that in our consumer lives, the machine learning algorithms that are out there and the ways that we're learning, that people are learning about us, have become incredibly integral. We see this every single minute of every day, whether it's Netflix making recommendations to us, whether it's Amazon looking at the fact that we bought some shoes and they're going to serve up some new shoes that we should take a look at the next time. There are machines constantly learning about us and serving things up to us that they think we would be interested in. What's great in this case is that machines actually create a better consumer experience for us. If you think about it, those machines are doing something that the stores can't do. When I go into Amazon, I see a store that's custom built for me. When I go into Target, whatever's on that end cap was not put in that end cap for my benefit. It was put on the end cap because the general populace might happen to like this stuff, but they don't have all the superhero stuff on the end caps like I obviously would want to see. So it's a unique experience, and it's built just for us. And we can do that for candidates as well. The question is, how do we apply some of these capabilities in automation, machine learning, personalization in our world? The last piece, and one that the talent world has been shockingly slow to adopt, is mobility, and sort of the everywhere platform, being able to work from anywhere, being able to accept applications from anywhere. You would be shocked at the number of people that I work with where mobile application still isn't something that they've been able to adopt in their systems, and it's taken us a very, very long time. Now, there's a significant portion of our population where they don't even have a computer, so it makes a lot of sense for us to get good at working in mobile. So this is sort of where we are today. This is what we see in our interactions with our consumer world. The last one that I'll call out that's my favorite is something really simple and automated, but is something that we haven't done for candidates just yet that I'm hoping we'll get to very, very soon, which is sort of the order tracker system. So when I order a pizza, I can order that pizza, and I know exactly what's happening with that pizza. I know that my order is in. I know the pizza's being made. I know that it's in the oven, that it's out for delivery, and then of course I know when it gets to my house. So I know all those things. I know the estimated amount of time that it will take to do that. Yet a candidate who's making this life-changing decision, changing careers, we aren't able to tell them what's happening. They fall in this black hole. And candidates expect a level of transparency. If they can know where their pizza is at any given point in time, they certainly want to know where their job application is at any given point in time. It's a much bigger deal to them. So it's things like that, translating the consumer experience to the talent experience that we're going to spend some time talking about, and that really ultimately we need to do in the end. So the technologies I'll talk about this morning will focus on a few different things, or afternoon for those of you in Europe that have joined us. They have to serve a purpose. You don't want just technology for technology's sake, unless you're one of the 9 people who answered the polling question saying they use every app, which, you know, I have to admit, I did the same thing. In fact, I was tinkering with this WebEx earlier and I broke something, and that wasn't great. So I use just about everything. But in our world, I think that the purposes that need to be served: better workforce decisions through data and analytics, streamlined, transparent processes. So some of the things we just talked about needing. Increased access to the right talent. That's huge. That's really what we're here for as a talent organization. We're here to provide improved access to the right talent. Anything that technology can do to help us is key. That's really our core value add. Stronger candidate engagement, eliminating the black hole experience, and then faster hiring. So these are some of the problems that we're trying to solve, where we're trying to leverage technologies. And as we go through, you'll see I'll reference these problems because that's what you start with. You start with a problem to solve versus just a cool tech you want to tinker with. All right, so making sense of a crowded digital landscape, we talked about modularization. Now, what in the world do I mean by modularization? Well, this is what I'm talking about. In the modularized world, we have hundreds and hundreds of new technologies at any given point, 400 new technologies every year in HR technology. It is an enormous landscape. And a lot of companies have gone with, hey, we're just going to simplify this. We go with one central platform. We use Workday and only Workday. We use Cornerstone and only Cornerstone, things of that nature. And what that does, it limits the capabilities, because those systems, by their nature, are sort of jack of all trades and masters of none. So what we're seeing a lot of times is point solutions that are just best in class. Maybe a startup has come up with a really, really great new feature that they're selling as a separate system now. And we have to figure out how to make all of these best-in-class systems work in a larger environment. So we've got these modules that are all over the place. How do we plug those modules in to make them more useful and to make sense of those? It's an incredible challenge that we're facing these days. And you know, one of the things that I've said for a while is that there are companies out there that have a whole company built around a feature. And when they go to sell me this stuff, I say, well, you're a feature, you're not a platform. And the question that I have to answer is, how do I plug them into a larger platform? This is something that I think all talent acquisition organizations are facing today. It's something that we certainly faced. What I'll do is I'll tell you how we've gone about solving the problem, and I'd love to hear how others are doing the same. The way that we've gone about solving this problem, now of course we're a large organization. We service many enterprise customers, so we're involved in several of their systems along the way every time we engage with someone. So anything that we do has sort of a multiplier in the hundreds. And so we had to come up with something efficient, and we call that talent velocity. So talent velocity is, instead of building our own technology, which I think is hard because we have all these point systems, all these startups, all this investment capital going in, they're always going to come up with a better idea. It's our job to figure out how we leverage the best new ideas to make us as effective as possible. So instead of building our own technologies, we've decided to find a way to integrate the best in class that's available, and to remain flexible so that we can switch those technologies if they don't make it, or if we need to make an adjustment along the way. So we built something. We tried to make it agile. We wanted it to streamline and leverage AI as much as possible. We wanted it to cover the full recruiting life cycle and help us manage process more effectively. And in order to do that, what we did is we broke this down into a few core technologies. Now, the applicant tracking system would be in addition to this. I typically don't bring an applicant tracking system to someone, so most of you on this webinar will need that in this top core stack section, so that would be added for you. In my world, the CRM is the foundational system. We bring in chat bots, and we have a few different providers we use for bots, and I'll cover those a little bit later. I believe in video interviewing and on-demand interviewing quite a bit, so that is built in as well. And then we have talent community management, and then analytics and reporting. So those are sort of the core pieces that I think we need to bring all the time, and we've integrated some technologies to do that. And then there are some point solutions that make sense sometimes. So whether that's employee referral programs, something like a role point, where we've had quite a bit of luck with several of our customers, automated reference checking. References are funny. I find that they're inconsistently applied. So what I'll say is probably 9 out of 10 of our customers don't do references anymore. Instead, they depend on just a background check and their interview process to vet candidates. But references, I think, have lost some value. So we don't do that all the time, but where we do, we automate it completely. Gamified assessments, online networking events, so things like a Brazen, where you can have open online chat rooms and things like that. And then something that's growing and I think is going to be huge, probably the next big revolution, the thing that we'll be spending a ton of time talking about in the next year or two, is freelance management. So all the freelancers, the people in the gig economy that are looking for those gigs, how do you manage that whole mess? And there are freelance management systems out there that I think are really solid and are really worth looking at. So how do we plug into that? The other thing that we're seeing sort of tied in here every once in a while, and we're seeing more and more of, is the VMS, vendor management system, and that's used to manage your contingent workforce. So when you add that VMS piece in, it helps to sort of bring the balance between your contingent workforce and your full-time employee workforce. And the term that we use for that is total talent, where one talent advisor can look after both contingent and permanent positions. So this is sort of our approach to doing this. I think that having a hub system that all of these other pieces tack onto as a module makes sense. So if you're a talent acquisition leader and you have an applicant tracking system, that applicant tracking system is probably your hub. That's probably what you would plug the other modules into. I would, if you're selecting an applicant tracking system, the one that I've been very impressed with recently that does a good job of being able to plug in lots of different technologies is iCIMS. We have 2 current engagements going on right now where we're plugging in different systems into an iCIMS environment, and that's been very impressive. By the way, we don't invest in or own or interact with in any other way. The iCIMS guys, they've just been very impressive. On the CRM side, and they also have an applicant tracking system, is Great People. That's what we use the most, and I'm a huge fan of Great People, and they are built for automation, man. That is what they do. They have an automated workflow. So just a couple of quick recommendations there. So coming from our talent trends survey again, we've learned that 74% of HR tech strategy has transformed or had a positive impact on business, and we are seeing that. That's a true stat. It's something that we're seeing happen quite a bit, and I'm happy that that's the case, right? That's what we're here for. We're wanting to have an impact. So, new question for you. What I'd like to ask is that you all in your the chat section of the WebEx, just give me some free form answers on this. What are the most innovative uses of data that you've seen? So we're about to go into a section where we talk quite a bit about data. What are the most innovative uses of data that you've seen up to this point? And I'll be looking for your comments to show up here.
Yes. So for those of you on the webinar who'd like to respond to what are the most innovative uses of data that you've personally and professionally seen, please feel free to use the Q&A function and send a prompt to the host and panelists. We will be looking for those. And I see the first few coming in. Jason, we are seeing some feedback around what appears to be the recruiter rec fulfillment data. So I guess rec load perhaps is one of the pieces of information we're getting from the field here. So do you want to speak to that and what you've seen in terms of helping to manage requisition load for recruiters or other talent advisor types of roles?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because different types of recs will obviously need different amounts of attention from a recruiter, I guess. So we've done some work recently where we're doing just that. We're looking at what the appropriate rec load is for a recruiter filling executive positions versus a recruiter filling low to no skill hourly. And then one that's really surprisingly hard to fill these days is skilled hourly positions. So things like truck drivers and mechanics, places where you have to have some sort of trade school or certification in order to be hired. In our analysis, we found that that's shockingly hard to fill as compared to even some of our mid to low level white collar workers. So software developers sometimes are easier to find than truck drivers these days. And who would have thought that that would be the case? But that is absolutely the case right now.
Yeah, and we have a few others that have come in. Tracking sourcer activity is another one. And also candidate preference trends for companies and the technology they hope to work with and for. That's another great one. Some predictive analytics here in terms of understanding experience, education, et cetera, for roles to focus on more talent, targeted talent acquisition rather. So anything you'd like to further kind of, talk about, Jason, based upon some of those other bits of information that are coming from our attendees?
Yeah, so we're seeing on the predictive piece, we're seeing some really great market data tools that come out that say, basically you can go in and change your requirements. You can play with the requirements of your position, adding and removing different technologies, and they'll tell you how much that will impact your ability to find candidates in that space. So I know Burning Glass has a great product in this space. Career Builder's Talent Intelligence Portal used to do this. A company called Brightfield does some good work in this space. So we're seeing some of those things where they basically predict how hard it will be to fill the job based on the skills that you're looking for, and I like that quite a bit. The comment right before, identify candidate preference trends for companies. I haven't seen that. That's an interesting one that I think we can pull. We have to ask more. I think we have to do a better job of documenting preferences, which I don't think, it's easy to pull data on fields that you have in your database, but there's not a lot of candidate databases that sort of has the hopes and dreams field. Like, what are you looking for? We ask
Right.
that question, but I don't know that we capture that outside of the notes that we have for candidates. That's a pretty good one to mine. I like that idea. I should see that. I remember seeing something from Workday about predicting when members of the workforce would likely be ready for their next move. Oh, that's
Yes.
huge. That's a big one.
Yes. So I was just going to point that one out, and I thought you would want to share some feedback on that and some of the things, you know, we're looking for to help clients pinpoint transitions like that.
Yeah, and this is actually where the power of a Workday type system or a Cornerstone type system comes into play, right? On the negative side, it's, you know, they're jacks of all trades, ace of none. But on the positive, they have all the data in one place. So what we've learned about when people are ready to change jobs is it has a lot to do with the members of their team and where their team has gone. Has their team left recently or not? Have they gotten a raise in X amount of time? Have they been promoted in X amount of time? So you can start building out algorithms based on what you know about these people on whether or not they're going to change jobs. You can also look at their historic behaviors. So have they historically left companies after X number of years? That's a heads up that instead of leaving our company, maybe we can provide them their next assignment. So really great work. There's a company called HiQ, H-I letter Q, that does some really good work on that front. And in fact, recently won a lawsuit with LinkedIn where they were pulling LinkedIn data, looking for certain behaviors based on behaviors in LinkedIn to add to what they knew internally. So they would look at internal behaviors and social media behaviors combined to determine likelihood that a person would leave a job. Really interesting stuff. I think we're at the very beginning of that. Actually, those algorithms will get more and more robust as time goes on, and I think I think we're going to see more of it. Thank you all for adding these comments in and questions. Keep those coming, by the way. As I'm talking, if there's something you need to throw in or interject, you can do that by tossing a question here, and I'm happy to jump in and answer that. It's really hard to do a webinar where I'm just talking to dead air. So thank you for providing some feedback on that. All right, so let me talk a little bit about what we're focused on and where I think we need to move when it comes to data. And as Tracy mentioned, we built a tool called Talent Radar internally that does a lot of this work. And Talent Radar is really a tool that allows us to do the things that I've listed here, which has to do with bringing data together from lots of places. And that's a big gap that we have right now in our HR technologies, right? So if we have this modular world, if we have a world where there's lots of different systems, and on average we're running into 3 to 5 different systems supporting talent acquisition alone, much less HR. So HR is you're going to be looking at perhaps 10 different systems that are providing information about employees. So how do you bring all the data from all those places into one view? Now, the way we've traditionally done it is the hard way. We've traditionally done that with Excel spreadsheets and crazy VLOOKUPs. We do VLOOKUPs all over the place. VLOOKUPs are our friends, and that's how we put that together. There are databases that do this better, and there's a process called ETL that you can put your data in order to sort of help it tell the story in a more effective way. ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. So you extract data from a system, you transform it so that it can tie in with the other piece of data, and then you load it into a new table so that it's reportable and usable and can help tell that larger story. So this is something that has to happen more often. You see big companies, the biggest company I think out there for ETL is a company called Informatica. That's what they do for a living. They have a great piece of software and technology that does that. We don't happen to use Informatica. We use a couple of other things to help us on that front, but that's a big piece. The next section is once you have your data together and clean, which is really hard, by the way, clean data is hard, predicting and prescribing what we should do next. So predicting and prescribing, here's the trick with that one. Predicting, we've heard of predictive analytics, and I think that's step one. I feel strange saying predictive analytics is step one because a lot of us aren't necessarily even doing that particularly well, but it really is. There are plenty of systems out there that do predictive. We have some innate predictive things built in that that would be surprising to you. You would not think that some of the tools that we're using every day are actually predictive. For example, a job distribution tool that we use called eQuest to send jobs to different places to advertise. They recommend where we should advertise based on the click rates that they're seeing for similar jobs in the marketplace. Well, that's actually prescribing what we should do. They're predicting where we're going to have the best results, and they're actually telling us what to do. They're prescribing what our next step should be in order to get the best possible results. So that you've heard the old adage that we post and pray. We don't. In our world, we post and know. We know what's likely going to happen because we have the data to tell us. And that's a big shift from where things used to be. And it's important to have the ability to post and know because there's such a huge percentage of jobs that get filled by people responding to advertisements versus the ones where we have to go and hunt them in the wild, which is absolutely viable. And we are a company called Sourceright, so we do source right. But we also have to attract right. So we're seeing some of those prescriptive technologies there. We're prescribing even what recruiters should have some roles in some of our teams. So we know for a fact that that the likelihood of meeting time to fill targets if a recruiter is new to a role and a hiring manager has not hired within the last year is almost zero. So what we try to do is prescribe which recruiters get which roles based on what they've historically done with us in the past and assign roles in that way. And if there's a recruiter that's filling a role they've never filled before, we try to do that in a time where there's a hiring manager who's experienced and has filled those roles frequently. So we know that we can put some of these variables together. If you have two variables that are problematic, that spells disaster. If you have two variables that can exist independently, we try to maximize that. So that prediction and prescription, I think, is where we have to move our data. Using the data to do our work and to make us smarter about our work is the big piece. This last piece says provide insights with authenticity. This is really hard. So providing insights is basically looking at your data and deciding what it's telling you. The challenge with the authenticity piece is in how clean our data is. And that goes down to the users of the systems themselves. So if we have systems that people are using and they're not consistently clicking buttons and doing what they need to do, the data is not very good, and the insights that we get from that data becomes murky. You have to have clean, this is sort of a foundational piece. You have to have clean data in order to do prescriptions and predictions. That's absolutely required. Providing insights with authenticity is important. There's an old Samuel Clemens quote. He said there's three kinds of lies: damn lies, and statistics. That's because people are accustomed to seeing us run into insights without authenticity. I've heard people say, I can make the data tell me almost anything. Well, that's true, but you can't do that with authenticity. Providing insight with authenticity is the big key here. It's a real challenge for us, ultimately. So I typically start any metrics discussion with questions. And these are some of the sorts of questions that I put out there. We have two sort of buckets. We have strategy setting, manager decisions. Apparently strategy has gears and heads, and managers are stick guys. So that's the sections that we have here. Can I predict new skills the business will need? What component of my workforce should be fixed versus flexible? That's enormous for us. Which areas of business should be automated? How can I build total talent? And then the manager is much more practical. Where can I find the skills? Where should I look? How do I hire contractors, freelancers, temp to perm? How should I approach this? So that's a legitimate question. Best sourcing channels, how much do I need to pay? How long will the role take to fill? All of these are valuable things that we should ultimately be asking. So strategy questions, hiring manager questions are some of the things that we're answering. If any of you are starting an analytics program, you're starting some work on this front, my strong recommendation is start with the questions you need to answer. So these may be some of the questions, you probably have some of your own that are more specific to your business, but that's your starting point. What questions do I need to answer is where we begin. All right. So let's get into AI and automation. This is the thing that we spent a lot of time hearing about, talking about. The title of this thing is "Robots Are Here Now What?" Let's focus a little bit on that. Talent trends surveys told us 68% say knowledge workers will be freed up to do more advanced work through smart technologies. 62% say it helps make the process more efficient. 58% say they're reskilling workers will be impacted by adoption so they can find other roles internally. And in fact, we're reskilling because we think that the role of the recruiter is completely changing. And we have a massive workforce of recruiters, and we're teaching them to do some of these new things, some of the next generation skills that we believe will be absolutely required as time goes on. So another polling question, I'm going to have to spend a little less time on this one, but where do you think AI will have the biggest impact on talent acquisition? Where do you think that will be? Answer right here in the Q&A.
Yeah, just as a quick reminder, in the Q&A function of the WebEx, please feel free to send any of your questions or commentary through to the panelists and the host. So we'll be watching for that and seeing what feedback everybody is sharing. So some preliminary feedback is coming in. Let's see here.
Official candidate screening for sure. I see that.
Yeah.
That's absolutely coming. Matching the resumes with the job description. Yes.
Right.
That's coming. Matching candidates to roles. We are seeing that. It's surprising. We're seeing that less frequently, but that's something that Google is spending a ton of time, and their AI work is focused on that. So you hear about Google's Jobs API. That's what that's focused on. And in fact, Great People that we use uses that API now. So that's a new thing. Reducing cycle times and selection and predictions on offer acceptance versus declines. Ooh, I like that one. Phone screen calls with AI and recording and transcribing the candidate's response. That's really an interesting one. I like that. Google just released a thing called Duplex. Many of you may have seen it. It's basically a phone-based system that feels like it's not a machine. So it called and made reservations with a restaurant in their demo. That was interesting. End of day analytics. That's one that I hadn't thought to build, but I like that one. So here's everything you accomplished today. That sort of thing. Phone screen calls, interview scheduling. Yeah, we're seeing a less interview scheduling than I thought we would. Honestly, a year ago, I thought that was the number one thing to go, but we're not seeing as much of it as I would expect. Automatically tracking diverse candidates through the entire process, also a quality answer. Here are the two things that I'm seeing the most. There's actually a third one I'll talk to you briefly before I dive into these two. The third one is automated writing. So you're seeing tools like Textio and Crystal Knows has been around for a while. Intello has a new product that's out. Wade and Wendy, who we work with, does this, where it takes information from the person's profile and writes communications that are tailor-made for those profiles. we're seeing that happen more often. Textio is basically spell check for jobs, looking for jargon and things that would make the job both gender neutral and more attractive to candidates in general. So they do a good job of that. As I said, spell check. It's more like grammar check for recruiting, looking for the things that will help you to be more attractive ultimately. So we're seeing some of those. That's not on this page. The two I wanted to focus on here are matching technologies and bots. That's where we're seeing the most work. So matching technologies, matching people to jobs, jobs to people, is where we're seeing a lot of work right now, and that's a really big deal. So the big question that we had to answer in this is which matching tool is best. There's a bunch of them out there. There is Bryland, Hiring Solve. You can go even to Text Kernel. Monster has a technology in their Cloud Search API that they use. So there's a great number of things. And we have the Great British Baking Show that's taken over Netflix at my house. And it's a good descriptor of what we did. We put these guys into a bake-off. And we gave them all a bunch of jobs and a big stack of candidates and said, match candidates to jobs. And then we had a set of sourcers actually on our team look at the candidates they presented and determine if they were good fits, bad fits, or completely irrelevant. And you and I both know we've seen first-year recruiters who have called us with jobs that are completely irrelevant for us, and those are the ones you just don't have patience for. So the big deal was selecting a tool that did not provide irrelevant matches for us in the end, and that's the trick there. So we did that. We have a couple of favorites. Unfortunately, I can't list out the results of our bake-off because we did sign NDA with all the people who participated. What I can do is tell you who we're using in the end, you know, it may not mean they were the perfect match, but it does mean that they're probably the best begging for the buck that we ran into. And we have a couple that we're engaged with. Hired Score is one. They're an independent company. We have a couple of folks with us doing Hired Score work, and then Monster's Cloud Search API is the other piece. So we're using Monster for quite a bit of those things. Ironically, this technology that Monster's had for a while, they called it 6 cents for a while. Now it's called Monster Cloud Search. When we put it through the bake-off, did an incredibly good job. I would have been happy with 80% of what everybody else does, but no, they did an incredibly good job. So we're pretty thrilled with that, and we'll be using those more often. There was also a thing called the SourceCon Challenge, and what that was is we put a bunch of the top 10 sourcers in the country up against a matching technology, just to see if the technologies were where they belong, where they need to be at this point. And we gave them all a fixed pool of resumes and 3 jobs to fill. And they got points for finding candidates that had actually been hired for the job, who had interviewed for the job, and who had been submitted initially by a sourcer for the job. And of course, the hired person is more points than the interviewed, and so on. So an actual game that we put together, we hosted this game at SourceCon last March, and of the top 10, well, I guess there were 11 contestants if you include the machine. Of the 11 contestants, the machine came in 3rd. And I was pretty happy with that. What that meant was the matching technologies are there. They're doing what they need to do. They're as good as recruiters. Here's the other piece. The person who won, who's a person I really respect and like a lot. I know personally a guy named Randy Bailey. He became the SourceCon Grand Master by beating the machine that year. He spent 28 hours on this challenge. The machine spent 3.8 seconds, I believe, 3.2 seconds. So, and it came in 3rd. So who really won in that case? I'm not sure. But yeah, matching technologies are there. If you're not using a matching technology, my recommendation is, as we talked about with modularization, I would plug one in. I think that's a huge place where you'll get immediate value. In fact, it's the place where we, as a business that does this for lots of different companies, sees the lowest hanging fruit and where we feel like we need to do a lot of this. The next place that we see work is in bots, and bots are interesting. The question that I get a lot of times is, are bots going to replace people? And the answer is, I don't believe so. I don't think the bots are going to replace people. The guy on the left, I think, is more of a Terminator. So I don't think the bots are the Terminator. I don't think they're going to take over. We don't have Skynet here. I think bots are more like an Iron Man suit. And bots are going to be here to supercharge or superpower the recruiters, not to replace them. I really believe that. We're going to need people that are piloting the Mark I Iron Man suit for a while. And we are very much in the Mark I Iron Man suit. We're not quite to the big fancy red and gold one that we see Tony Stark flying around in all the time. So here's where bots are. They're more challenging than you would think, and we're going to see a slow build-up and then sort of an exponential growth, I think. We're not quite at the exponential growth of bots yet. The reasons why are that each conversation that a bot spins up is unique and has to be configured. So that's why you're seeing a lot of success with bots in high volume, low skill work, because you can configure a chat one time and have a huge multiplier. But if you're in a position like many of our customers are, where we have 80% uniqueness in jobs, that becomes very hard. We need bots to be able to write their own questions, and they can't do that just yet. Getting close, but not just yet. Competencies vary by function, so assessment and candidate engagement, interview scheduling. The types of jobs you're filling are really important on this piece and where it makes sense. And then if you want to fully automate the recruiting process, meaning you want to replace what the recruiter does every day, not just replace the screen as a part of the chat, but replace the ability to change statuses and do other things, it requires very deep integration. We're talking open heart surgery with your applicant tracking systems, which we haven't quite gotten to yet. So those are the places where I think bots aren't quite there yet. But bots are absolute enhancements to the process right now, and we'll see more and more work done to enhance that process. I think that that you'll see that coming. So the conclusion of this is that they're not going to be driving cars on their own. They're going to be more like autopilot. They need so if you think about a plane, you have a skilled hand that handles the takeoff and the landing and monitors the autopilot throughout the process, keeps an eye on it to make sure everything's going smoothly. If you hit some turbulence or some sort of risk, the human takes over at that point. I think that's where bots are going to be. In fact, that's where they are for us today. We have people who configure the bots, who manage those bots as they go, and who close the position in the end. And that's going to be the case for a while. So less self-driving car, more autopilot with skilled operators at the helm. And those recruiters are the skilled operators. In fact, the recruiter's job has to transform. And we are actively right now in the process of that transformation. So in the future, we very much believe that recruiters have the following 5 primary roles. They are purple squirrel hunters. We still need people to go and find candidates that aren't in our database, that aren't low-hanging fruit, that we have to figure out a new rock to overturn in order to find them. We're going to need that going forward. Robots do their bidding, so robots have to be trained, they have to be configured to do the work. So talent advisors are going to have to be the masters of the robots. They have to become marketing masters. If we're all able to find candidates and do it in an automated, easy way, the differentiator is who can attract those candidates to your job more than the next job. Being great at marketing is key. Talent community builders, building relationships with candidates over a period of time, cultivating talent. That's also a key for us going forward. And then being experts empowered by data, using all the data that we talked about before, the predictive and prescriptive things, in order to drive what they do, drive their recommendations, to answer some of those strategic questions, and even some of the hiring manager questions. Should I hire temp or perm? Those are the things that talent advisors will have to do. Their jobs completely transform. And in fact, our talent advisors are about halfway through this, and by the end of the year, they will be trained in each of these verticals to transform their job going into next year. And I believe I don't believe we're too far ahead of the curve. I think that is absolutely necessary right this minute for us to maintain the value of that workforce. So all that being said, I have some key takeaways for you here. To start with, connections are key. But connecting data and connecting with people becomes the most valuable thing that you can do in this new modularized world and highly digital world. Data should drive actionable insights, and I think we also said authentic insights. Both of those things are important. AI will enhance recruiters, not replace them, and then recruiters will become talent advisors. Those are the last pieces in there. So the bottom line conclusion here is tech and touch creates talent superheroes. I really believe that's true. You can see that I'm a fan of said talent superheroes as well. But I think that we will see recruiters becoming talent advisors empowered by these AI technologies, the data behind them, and all the tools that are available in this sort of integrated technology stack to make them stronger than they've ever been before. And with that,
thank you, Jason.
Back up to Tracy.
Yeah, so we did have a couple of questions come in, and I know we just have 2 minutes before we reach our time limit, but one of the questions from an attendee was, is there a site or sites or people you follow, or can people follow you to get the latest updates, some of which obviously you shared on the session today?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things. Obviously, I'm publishing stuff all the time, so look for things that I put out on the Randstad Sourceright side. The Randstad Innovation Fund is an investment fund that Randstad has, and they do research in this space that's incredibly extensive, and they offer it up for free on their website. So if you go to the RandstadInnovationFund.com, I do a ton of research piggybacking off of their stuff. I think it's really, really good. So I take full advantage of that. It's absolutely free. It's out there. I would use that. Talent Trends is the thing that we publish, and it's a pretty nicely packaged sort of report. And we do this, we do a quarterly release and then a big annual report. Those are always free for use, and they take into account these surveys from large populations. And next year, we're doing something really interesting where we're going to survey mini populations. We're going to do our normal group of talent leaders. We're also surveying a large number of candidates and a large number of recruiters in the industry to get sort of this 360 view. So I keep an eye on Talent Trends. I think that the team that puts that together does a great job, and I would keep an eye on that specifically.
Yes, and as you mentioned earlier, our Talent Trends quarterly edition comes out today, so we will be sure to share that with the attendees on today's session, and we'll look forward to sending along the recorded link for those of you who want to share this with your colleagues. So thanks everybody for joining our webinar today, and we'll look forward to connecting with you again soon. Take care.
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks all for joining.